there are really two basic states of being. You're either in love or you're in fear. And fear, then creates a host of other things like anxiety, depression. It could create anger and apathy and all of these negative emotions, where love puts us in the present moment. It allows us to even be in heart and brain coherence so that we're in a brainwave state that is more creative. And the only place that we can create from is when we're in the present moment and when we're in the state of love, right?
Welcome back, listeners. This is Carol Mirko. It's a loud voice for love time, right? We're going to get loud and we're going to get loud with love. And today I have a very, very, very special guest. He's special for so many reasons, and we've been friends for years. So I want to make that clear that he's somebody that I know and love.
No.
And Tom has had an incredible journey in his life. His life has been, what can I say, touched beyond the stars, which is actually the name of his book, which I highly recommend. It's his life story, and but Tom was abducted by aliens when he was 10 years old, and his life is full of I'm going to call it magic like that because I want to kind of put that in a different context. A lot of people think it's so scary, and I think it was terrifying for Tom, and it was an event that informed the rest of his life since he was 10 years old. And but what I appreciate about Tom is that, in his wise years, he has come to the space or place, like, or maybe outer space of of
Really
love,
outer space there, Carol.
the outer space of love.
Right.
And I want you to hear from him because it's so profound, at least to me, because I think we all wonder, are we alone? Are we, is there more, right? Like, what is this life all about? What is our purpose? And, I know through my journey that the purpose is love. And for me, it's to raise the consciousness of the planet, to get people to move out of fear and into love, out of hate into love, out of vitriol into love, and into oneness. And so let's hear from somebody who's experienced what I'm going to say, oneness at a level that most of us, well, maybe hopefully or hopefully not, will ever experience. So welcome, Tom Warner.
Thank you for that just absolute marvelous introduction, Carol. I couldn't have said it better myself, you know. So yeah, many people know that, through Netflix, which was a
Yes.
highly popular show that I was featured in, the Berkshire UFO, where I was abducted at 10 years old. And it did profoundly change, slowly, profoundly change how I felt about life and what's beyond the stars. And that's why I came up with the title of my book, Beyond the Stars, because the information I was learning slowly wasn't just an earthly thing; it was also beyond the stars. And
Yeah.
I slowly came to the conclusion. The ultimate conclusion was that for humans to survive and move on, we're not going to fly out of here anytime soon. You know, our rockets are slow. We don't have the technology to some of these items or UFOs that have come into our space in the not just the United States, all over the world. And we don't have that technology. It just isn't. I mean, if you look back in time, and the Native Americans saw these sailing ships come in, and they thought they were gods. I mean, these things were massive, and they're coming in and everything. From their perspective at the time, that was amazing. And then all of a sudden, we're not that far removed from the Wright brothers, and yet we have aircraft that can just zoom. You can get on a plane now and be out in LA and zoom off to Paris and that's where we are at the moment. But time is irrelevant. We've been so programmed to time that there are 60 seconds in a minute, there are 60 minutes in a year. After 60 years, she's supposed to be old, you know? I mean, all these stupid things.
Right. Well, that's
But
conditioning.
it's conditioning, but it's human conditioning
Right.
about time. And my
Right.
point is this: for humans to ever get to a point where we can travel to beyond the stars or beyond our galaxies, we're going to need time. And to have time, we have to take care of the planet in a very loving way and each other in a very loving way, in a caring way, because that's the only way humanity progresses. And that's my overall message that I've had. And I didn't come to this easily, Carol. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how could you? I mean, here we are. One of the things, it's so funny because when, Tom and I became friends, I think my soul was already on the journey, but my mind hadn't caught up to my soul of this type of work, right? To
Mm-hmm.
understand the quantum field, to understand infinite possibilities, right? To
Right.
understand that, time and space is a construct in which we live. But it's not the construct in which the universe lives, right?
That's right.
And so, we're so lucky because quantum physics has, finally proven a lot of what the ancients already knew, right? I mean, that, we are all energy, right? That we actually have the psychic ability, the actual ability to think actually beyond the stars, right? Right, to
Right.
connect to
Right.
the infinite possibilities. And so, it's quite a lot of hubris, I believe, to think that we are the only species, right? We're the only
Right.
intelligent beings in the universe. Um, and isn't it more exciting to believe that, like, and I really do believe that we live in such an abundant, loving universe. And I've got two charms. One of them is a whale because I think
I
whales
love whales.
are
Right.
magical, right? Like,
Right.
but the other one, which nobody will be able to read because it's so small, but it says, "Love is the greatest power." And the flip side of the heart says, "Use your power." Right? And I think
Well,
we
that's a
forget that.
wonderful, yeah, it's a wonderful saying because there's there's two types of there's two types of energy. There's positive and there's negatives. There's good, there's bad. And it depends. Do you call the lamb or you call the wolf? And and, and so often we get caught up in so many things and we call the wolf, we get angry at so many things, but sometimes you have to step back and and really think, why does this bother me? Something bother you? And how can I improve myself on a self basis? Because it starts with yourself.
Huh.
And that's the realization that I came to. I came
Yeah.
to, why did I come forward and tell this my story, which was very painful to tell. I just couldn't tell it right away. We just
Well,
didn't
you were
talk about
also
it.
told not to tell it since from the
Yeah.
second it happened, right?
Well,
Do
yeah.
not tell anybody this. Don't talk about
No,
it.
no, we didn't talk. I mean, certain people knew about it,
Right. Well, they
but
saw
I would say it was one of the
it.
best kept secrets in Berkshire County. Even in high school, people said, "I didn't know that happened to you." And then another friend would say, "Well, I saw that too."
Yeah. Yeah.
Even my own neighbor. Think about this. So when I would get ready for school, I'd look out to Division Street and I could see the Greens house from mine
Hmm.
because there was no trees or anything back then.
Yeah.
So, but they were my neighbors, and I didn't know that their kids were out in the yard. I didn't, I never gave it a thought. And Jane Green, God bless her, she she was somewhere else, didn't want to tell her kids didn't want to tell her. So the story never got out.
Yeah.
Until, of course, then this slowly did get out. And then she told her kids she was interviewing, and they were shocked. They said, Mom, we didn't know you saw that. We saw it on the same night. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was obvious fear, right? And there was and I think,
I think,
I now we know the term gaslighting, but I think people were, if they saw it, people would try to convince you that you were nuts, right? Like,
well,
so
well, it wasn't like that, because the people who actually when someone eyewitness you,
yeah.
they kind of,
No, but I meant others outside of that.
right, other outside. The only people I ever talked to on that were people that I knew that understand it,
Yeah.
you know,
Good. Well, that's
and
good. So you
and
knew to
and
protect
that was
yourself.
good. But as things developed, like into my teens and everything, uh, people they they went away from me.
Yeah.
It was very painful, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
especially when you're young, and
Yeah, I can't imagine like having, friends not be friends anymore. Well, I guess I can because I think maybe we've all experienced that.
we've all
Like,
experienced it. But when you experience it over and over and over and over, after a while you go,
yeah,
this is not a good topic to talk about.
yeah, yeah.
You know? But
So go ahead, keep going. I don't want
yeah,
to.
so how it came about was some of my closest friends knew about some of these events that happened, and somehow, because they're involved in my life, they saw some of the miracles that came about through me and everything. And I remember one particular person that was interviewed. He says, I've known Tommy since he was 13. The first thing he did, he came up, he says, how you doing? I'm Tommy Warner. I, I just want you to know I was abducted by aliens. And because he had introduced himself as a scientist. So I thought, oh, this is a perfect guy to talk about this. And I said, yeah, I was abducted by a UFO. And he says, I never forgot it. He says,
Mm.
it just blew me away. I said, this kid's really different,
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but I was able to talk to certain people about it, so there was a very, very, very small group of people that knew about it, but I had no intention of ever telling the whole story. But these paranormal things kept happening over and over and over and over again, until it's like, let's beat Tommy on the head till he's
yeah,
ready to go out and help the world. And I'm like, I
yeah.
didn't I didn't choose this life. I didn't go like, hey, it'd be really great.
Well, actually, our souls do choose our lives. So you did.
Well,
You
probably as then it was from an infant then, because
no, it was
consciously,
before you were an infant. You
yeah,
chose to come
probably it was.
into,
That's a
and
good point. That's a
yeah,
good point. Is it something that's chosen genetically even before you're born? It's
well,
possible.
your soul, I think, does, choose your parents, right? And but what I know is that, when you first see little babies, they're
Mhm.
still connected to divine love, right? I mean, because the
Yeah,
veil is so
baby,
thin. It's
right?
so thin.
They
Like,
don't come out hating.
no, they
No
come
baby
out as
comes out
pure
like,
love.
babies don't come out like that. They
No.
don't.
And so what happens is, like, we come in as, the divine love, from between our parents. And then, and I could be wrong. Anybody who could, like, take me up on this, but this is my belief. So,
Right,
and
right. And you're sticking to it.
well, because it's so beautiful, right? It's so much more like, can't we just focus on, like, the love and the beauty, and that as
Mhm.
little beings, really, we're just pure consciousness, we're pure love.
Mhm.
And then we begin to forget, like, it's almost we are snapped into amnesia as we become, you know um involved in the 3D world, right? Like, it's sort of like, all of a sudden, we begin to learn polarity, right? We begin to learn the us's and them's, right? Like, it's just because we see our parents start talking about that, like, we start hearing things, and then, we sort of evolve into kind of these conditioned beings, not intentionally, right? This is just how it works, right? Like, and maybe for some it's intentional, but I know in particular in my family, probably in yours as well, Tom, that like our parents had such beautiful intentions around how they raised us, and now what I just see is like we're all just we're so imperfect, right? But we're perfect,
That's
right?
true.
Like, and that everybody's doing the best that we can. But
Mhm.
isn't it so much better to do the best that we can through the lens of love than through the lens of fear?
I couldn't agree with you more, Carol, because I I concentrate on positive energy all the time, and positive energy is when you're caring. That's why I came forward. I came forward to help people who have had similar experiences,
Yeah.
and not just that, but a worldview. I didn't intend to come into a worldview, but it happened,
Well,
and,
I think
and
it's a universal view. You're
it's
like,
well,
it's
yeah. How is it that it's we are a speck of sand on this earth. We're a grain of sand on this earth, and our
right,
earth is a grain of sand in the universe.
right,
So the microscopic being that I am, it takes a collectiveness from humans to start this process of truly caring about each other,
yeah,
and the process of humanity. I'm talking about humanity. I'm
I
not
agree.
talking about go USA or
No, no.
and none of
As
that.
you wear your Montreal shirt, so
We as a go Habs. As you know, my wife's from Montreal, so
yes, I do.
just yeah. So, but my point is this: is our being, we have to do our best because every single grain makes up a beach. Every grain of sand, it takes a lot of grain of sands to make up that beach, and it takes a lot of voices to slowly say, we got to take care of each other and take care of this planet.
Yes.
I watched a series. It was really interesting. It really changed my philosophy a little bit. It was A Bug's Life. Now, kudos to National Geographic, who by the way, as you know, I was featured on National Geographic UFOs investigating the unknown, and I saw this series, and it was on bugs, and I saw this little spider, and they had the life of a spider, this tiny little spider, and he's just minding his own business up on a rooftop and stuff, and another spider comes along, and he goes, bully, boom, off he goes. And now it's his journey to try to get back to somewhere where he's protected. And how they filmed it was amazing. But the whole journey, when by the time I was done, I said, those little tiny black spiders that are they're in one spot and pew, and they jump and they're gone. Well, that's what a spider was. And I thought I could never squish one of those ever again
Yeah.
because it has a purpose. Its purpose, every single detail on this planet is related to another detail comes back and it's related to us. And so that's called micro thinking. As you know, if you took business, anybody took business and they liberal arts, you had microeconomics and you had micro,
Macro. Right.
micro, micro and macro. And we're more on the macro side because we think we're on the macro
Right.
side, but we really are not. We're just a little bit bigger than that little tiny creature. But we have the ability to talk and communicate and say, look, we can make a difference. And
Beautiful.
it's positive energy. It's whether it's planting a tree or you know helping somebody that needs help, for instance, if they need help with food or something like that. Like my son, he volunteers at a food bank, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's those little tiny things that we can make a difference for each other.
Yeah. It's the micro actions and
Right.
I love that because I do believe everything has a consciousness,
Mhm.
everything. And everything is a sentient being, right? To think that a tree isn't sentient or a blade of grass
Oh no.
or, I
So
mean, it's just and we're learning more and more and more, right? Just, the scientists, I mean, one of my favorite recent books was Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. I don't know if you've read it,
mhm.
but she's the woman who discovered the Wood Wide Web, right? She discovered
Right, right.
and how there's this massive communication system,
Between trees.
right? And the thing is,
When
it's
you
the
read this stuff,
invisible,
it blows your mind. You're like,
right?
it makes you look at the forest. You appreciate
Yeah,
that those trees are help giving you oxygen.
right. I mean,
They're helping you breathe. If they go, you go.
exactly, exactly.
So it's this interconnections we have to everything, not just with ourselves, but nature. You
And
can't.
look at that tree. Let's just use that as a metaphor, right? The
Hmm.
deep roots, right?
Hmm.
The strong trunk,
Hmm.
the outcropping of all the branches, right? So
Right.
we've got like heaven and earth, right? Like
Right.
and I did that wrong. Heaven and earth. I went heaven and earth. And
Not
but
going
then
that way.
no, then think
But you-
about like the tree itself, right? It's like it's strong yet flexible.
right.
Right. Look at what we could learn from that tree, right?
Yeah. Do you know, speaking of trees, now, as you know, we've been in the same house for 6 generations, right? So
Yes.
way back when, 1835 or whatever, my great great grandfather decided he liked maple trees. And he planted a maple tree here and a couple there. And the seeds fell down, and the next generation took those seeds and they put up another tree. And we put up a tree all the time. And so at one point, we had all 6 generations up.
Beautiful.
But but they got old, and they came down, but in the meantime others came up, and that's life.
Yeah.
And what we do as humans is what we pass on to the next generation, our gift to the next person, not necessarily your kids or whatever, just people in general. What you
Yeah.
pass on matters. What's your message that you pass on matters. Your behavior as a human being matters. And for me, just opening it up, here I am. This is the story I'm going to tell. I told a little bit more, a little bit more. I hinted a little bit more after Unsolved Mysteries, and I hinted a little bit more on National Geographic. And as you know, I've written my own screenplay because it has to come through my eyes to tell this story. It's the only person that can tell it. It has to come through my eyes, and it's really the story that's gonna. I'm really opening up, and that's what you have to do as a human being. You have to be willing to be a little vulnerable to your emotions to help others. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, in the middle of the night last night, I happened to get up. I don't even know why I got up, and I got up and I had an email from someone saying that they just needed to chat with me from Canada
Mhm.
about UFO stuff. And I reached out and reached back, and the person's story, he's well known. The person's well known, and so he can't talk,
Yeah.
but he needed someone to talk to. And
Yeah.
because I was willing to say, "Hey, look, I was on the UFO. I got the hand on the shoulder and all this stuff. And I was eyewitness on the ground. I was eyewitness on the UFO. I was eyewitness put back down." It leads to credibility, and that being able to say all that, knowing that there's gonna be people out there that gonna just want to hammer you on all this stuff. It's okay because no one has the exact answer. But if you have heart and you can listen, you remember, you listen with your heart. You listen with your heart. When you talk to people, take their thoughts into consideration. And that's what I try to do.
Well, that's an important message, um, because I think and I think this has happened to most of us throughout our lives, is that we have tender hearts, right? And so what happens
Mm.
is we have little hurts, maybe when we're
Hmm.
little kids, right? And so what happens is we sort of begin to build a little fortress, right? Because we want to protect our tender hearts.
Hmm.
And then, it kind of almost shuts that part of us down, right? And this is why I think this conversation is so important,
Right.
is that our heart is the center of our truth, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And you know how they're like, what's true, what's false now, right? Because it's just, and it's like, well, it's like we're not quiet enough. We don't to like to listen to our heart, right? Because our heart is never going to lie to us. Our heart is the center, the seat of our soul.
Right. Just always remember, truth is like cream. It always rises to the top.
Yeah. But we
Always.
can find it, right? If we are quiet
Well, if you're
enough.
quite, if you, one of the things I like, so one of the reasons someone asked me, why do I run? I run every day, as you know. I've
Good.
run just, I have not missed a day.
That was
Whether
what are you up to? Like
I in two less than 2 weeks, I'll have run 3 straight years.
yeah,
And people
it's
go,
amazing.
like, are you nuts? And they said, well, why would you ever do that? When did you start? I said, well, if you'd see when I started when Ukraine was invaded, and I saw some of those children, and I said, I need to go. I said, if they can go out and defend themselves and talk about their freedoms and everything, and I saw mothers with their children, and I saw the outpouring of love from Poland and the world and the United States, and I said, if they can do that, I can go out
And run in all
and run,
weather.
and I'd go out and I'd say a prayer. That's
Mm,
it for those people.
yeah.
I prayed for peace. I pray that that somehow I just send out positive energy out into the universe. And so I'm like, if they can do that, I can do that. And I've almost 3 straight years, and it's been almost 3 years since Ukraine
Yeah.
was invaded, and
Right. In
it's
February.
so unnecessary. I mean, all these conflicts.
Yeah.
I mean, the conflict in Gaza.
Yeah.
You know, you go back and you go like, what are you people killing each other for? You know, I mean, if we were all went to a party and we all came in with guns, we'd be shooting each other. I mean,
Right.
that's absurd. It's
It is it's
absurd.
I don't disagree. I mean, in fact, I wholeheartedly agree that, I don't know where that instinct is, except that maybe
Right,
it's a leftover survival instinct, right? From because 10,000 years ago or whatever, you know,
right.
the fight or flight, right? It's just like, and so, but it was really about survival. It was like, putting food on the table. It was about um, not being eaten by a lion, right? It's like, but now, you know, in modern society, it's almost like we don't want it's like there's some block, some stuckness, right? Because there's plenty of food for the entire planet, plenty of food, right? Like we
It can
live
be grown, by doing these things. If we spent more time on peace,
exactly.
you'd have a heck of a lot. You'd have a heck of a lot more or less problems. I'm not
Yeah,
saying you're
and
never going to have.
real
It's going
peace.
to be real, true peace. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. And
I mean,
I think, Tom, and I it's like in my absolute depths of my heart, I believe that every human on this planet wants the same thing.
I here's my thought on that. When people get so caught up in the rah rah, I call it, You know, they lose their vision.
Yeah.
Now, here's
Well,
one
they
for
get
you. You know,
narrowly
right?
focused.
They narrowly focus. Now, if you go back to the most destructive time in generations, it would definitely have been, without a doubt, World War II. I mean,
Yeah.
it just was. I mean, everybody, the whole place was bombs away everywhere. You know, I mean, you couldn't escape it. You couldn't escape it. It was everywhere. And at that time, there was one force that perplexed both Germany, Russia, Americans, and that was that they called them Foo Fighters, just full of energy, whatever. And the Germans, of course, thought, oh my God, the Americans have a weapon. This is this is nuts. The Russians said, it has to be Germany or Americans who have it. And everybody thought the other person had this weapon. But no one ever thought maybe the weapon wasn't from Earth at all. Maybe it was an outside force. And I'm not saying God, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying whatever UFOs, all this paranormal stuff was sending these things. Now, if you look at history, when events happen like that, it came at a time when the planet and the people needed to wake up. And I always just absolutely laughed when coined the the phrase woke, and I'm like it was a bad thing. You
Right.
like
Like compassion and kindness and love is
right. I mean, like truth is truth,
right. Love is love.
and love is love. You know, you have to be able to say we were imperfect. You know, this whole thing about our country never did anything bad or anything like that. That's a bunch of garbage. I mean, you can look if you're a historian, you're going to go through stuff and you can go like, wow. But the thing about history is we're supposed to learn from it,
Exactly.
and we're supposed to be that shining light on the hill, as it was referred to in such a beautiful, elegant way for politicians to say, we're the shining light. America's the shining light. Well, for America to become the shining light, we really have to we have to really go into our micro thinking
Right.
and look back at ourselves as that grain of sand and say, how can I personally improve myself to help others and to love?
Yeah.
Because if you hate, that brings on darkness.
Yeah. Well, and this is the
And
work.
that's what I appreciate about you so much.
Yeah. Well,
You are
thank
like
you.
you are truly a shining light. And I'm lucky to have a friend like you.
Well, thank you. But the reason why I started this show called A Loud Voice for Love
Mhm.
was because I think we need to amplify these messages, right?
Right,
That,
right.
we are just specks of sand,
Hmm.
that make up the beach. And the
Hmm.
beach is then part of, this the planet Earth, and planet Earth is a speck in the universe.
Hmm.
And how many and think of all the galaxies that we don't even know that exist, right? And
We are that tiny spider.
yeah, we
We
are
just
that's
don't we just don't want to admit it. And the
yeah.
tiny spider says, I am huge. I am huge. I am big. I am important. And then he looks up and he sees the crow.
It's like and so but that the fact that we are that speck of sand, we are that tiny spider, and we are, as humans, right, 3D physical dense beings.
Hmm.
We have a whole set of emotions that for whatever reason, right, they're part of who we are, right?
Right.
But one of the things that I think most people don't understand, and this is the point where I'm going to tie it back to you taking, well, we have to take care of ourselves, right?
Hmm.
It's 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 the self-love part, right? And and self-love is self-mastery. So, and self-mastery is like really being aware of our thoughts, like, and our
Hmm.
feelings, right? Because our thoughts and our feelings are connected
Hmm.
and they're chemically connected. So happy thoughts produce happy chemicals. So there you are creating your, what is it? Your, when you're running, is it dopamine that you create, like the
Right, it
runners,
does
right? Right,
naturally. Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
that's
Right.
just by doing some physical exercise, you create a happy chemical.
Hmm.
But our thoughts create chemicals, and statistically, we spend 70% of our time, sadly, creating the hormones of stress because we are in a society that is barraging us, right? They
Hmm.
understand how to limbically hijack us. They understand that if we kind of present like information that kind of stirs the fears in your, then you cannot think clearly. So, and when we can't think clearly, we're in survival, and then shit happens. Excuse my French.
Oh, English. That's English. Oh, zit, but what? That
That's
that sounds like English.
it's
That's
merde,
English to me.
merde. Excuse my merde. Right. Um, so and so this what you're talking about, what I talk about is doing things or becoming aware, right?
Mhm.
Like is the fear real or are you just hijacked, right? Like can you, and do you know that like there are two states of being, right? It's you're either in survival or you're in creation. And I look at survival as, being stuck in those fearful, angry emotions, and I look at
Mhm.
creation as being in love, right?
Mhm.
And when we're in creation, gosh, there's a liberation of energy, right? Like and that's when the compassion happens. That's when all the magic happens. And I just, and the work that I'm doing now, it's like even if it's one person at a time, if I can move somebody out of a low frequency emotion up the scale, like I
Right.
know that there's an exponential impact on the consciousness of the planet when you move from fear to love.
One grain at a time.
Exactly.
One grain at a time. And that's how you do things. It's you become the light. You do things. I never came forward to talk about paranormal stuff or my abductions or paranormal or telepathy or telekinesis and all these. I did it to show that these things exist. And by coming forward for those who suffer, some people suffer.
Mhm.
I talked to one particular person. He's been in therapy since 1969. Now, I don't know who the therapists were, but that's a long time. I never, I, you know, for some people, that's what they go because they just don't have anybody to talk to or anything. And
Exactly.
so by coming forward and being vulnerable, you have to realize, you know, your personal hurt can help heal somebody else.
Exactly.
And that's why I wrote the book. That's why
Yeah.
I did the movies. That's why I went National Geographic. That's why I did all these interviews all over the world. I'm doing it to help others. That's it.
Yeah.
And and it's been like a journey to get to where I am and be able to say, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're okay. And and wherever we go from here, I'll know that I held up a candle
Yeah. Yeah.
and that I would be the grain of sand that tried to help other grains of sand.
Yeah. It's such a beautifully articulated, and I mean I have the tears just kind of, and
I did a,
Um,
I got to tell you this, Carol. I did a painting once. I guess it's up my studio somewhere, and it was that of a candle.
mm,
And the darkness was on the outside, but when you looked at the candle, it was that inner tiny little speck of light
yeah.
that created this glow.
Mm,
And it was about I was expressing I was expressing love because when you can show that light, even in the darkest times and the darkest places, someone will see that and
yeah.
someone will hear that. And I'm the I'm the voice that they gave that tiny little speck of light to from
Beyond the stars.
beyond the stars.
And
And the story will get told. The only place I could possibly tell it is in a movie, and that's why I went with the movie.
yeah, and we're looking forward to
Yeah, and it's a
that.
long ways, but we're
Yeah.
getting.
Yeah. But it's it's brave, it's important,
Right.
and and for I think many of us, um, you are bringing me to tears. So um
I don't mean to bring you to
no,
tears,
in a
my
good
dear
way, right?
friends. Yeah,
It's
right.
that like, love can bring you to tears because it's so
Right.
powerful, right? It's so
Hmm.
powerful. And it's that crack, right? When,
Hmm.
'cause some people they can't feel love because they put
Hmm.
such a big fortress around their hearts for
Right.
whatever reason.
Right.
And, if this message can just get to
Right.
anybody, even me with a wide open heart can still
Hmm.
be opened wider, right? Like
Right. I'm
by
gonna
by
I'm gonna give you an example.
okay.
Okay. So as you know, I see things before they happen.
Yeah.
Someone go, "Oh, that's really cool." No, it's not. Not always. And I just knew, I just sense it, and I'm up, we're up Montreal, and I'm going to pick up my wife, and I'm in the third lane on this highway, and all the traffic's slowing up, slowing up, slowing up, slowing up, and all of a sudden I get to the I go right up to the intersection. Why there wasn't other cars, but anyway, I get out of my van at the time to see what's going on, and about a 16-year-old girl had just gotten hit by a car, and everyone was standing back. They didn't want to get near the body. And when I approached her, I went checked for the pulse. There was no pulse, no breathing. I'm like, oh boy. So I ran to my truck to get a blanket because I thought if I can't jump start her with CPR, I didn't want all these people standing and staring at her.
Yeah.
That was somebody's daughter, you know? And the only people who would help me was another person. He was about 25, and this little girl who was probably 9 or 10. And she goes, "How can I help? What do I do?" And I said, "You just stand there, and if any cars get by him, you yell to me because we don't all want to get hit again."
Okay.
And so I'm preparing myself mentally to do CPR to try to bring this child back to life. She was about 16, and she's all bloodied up. And I'm thinking, God would not punish me. Give me something for giving this child CPR and blood all over me. I already had blood all over me anyway. And all of a sudden I hear the telepathy saying, "Thomas, put your hands over her, take a deep breath and breathe for her. Breathe it, believe it with all your heart, and she will breathe." And I put my hands over her, I went like this, and her whole chest rose, and she started breathing again. It was because I was able to believe. I didn't do it. It came through me.
Yeah.
And she started breathing again.
Yeah.
And that because I was able to accept that tiny light from infinite away to talk to me, that I was able to do this, that was able to pass on and give a miracle.
Yep.
Now, the parents found out that I had saved her. I didn't want to go. I just said, no, just, I'm so glad she's coming home, because other people's kids don't come home.
Yep.
But that little girl who watched that, she saw the light. She saw that I was willing to get blood all over me and to try to save that life. And she saw someone who was dead come to life. She saw a tiny speck, a grain of sand giving off light. And that's what you do. Love is giving when you have nothing else to give, but yet you still deep down, dig down, and you give. And you make that your personality. And that's what I try to do every day.
I don't think there could be a better message. This might be the only interview I need to do. But
Carol, you're a good soul. You really are. You really truly are. I always say there are no accidents. There's only appointments.
yeah,
And we're meant to connect to other people. So if you're the light, you will connect to other people who hold a torch.
yeah.
And that's your job. You're a torch seeker. You're the torch seeker.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of thinking of it. But I also feel like we also help each other,
Absolutely.
not only seeking the torch, but also being the torch, right? Like
Absolutely.
when one of us is down, like we're gonna, go and just do the, zzz. And because the other thing is that individual grains of sand, but imagine when a bunch of these candles, these small candle specks of sand come together,
hmm
right?
hmm
And
hmm
just think how much brighter the light gets so that we can
Right.
really amplify it, right? And I
Right.
think that's what that's what I see this show as, is like is an
Right.
amplifier, right?
Right.
So you reach out to me, reach out to Tom, reach out, like, or not, or just sit here and listen to this
hmm
this conversation over and over again,
Right.
because there's more than just the words here. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I hope everybody could feel the love. I mean, there's so much love right here. Um and that, so the words, it's what's behind the words, right? Because the
hmm
words are
Action.
limited, right? The words are
It's-
limited, right?
Right. It's your actions.
Right.
They count.
And they do count. The word
hmm
and also the invisible parts of how we show up, right?
hmm
It's that it's that glow, right? It's that inner
hmm
glow, right? Like,
Right.
sorry, flies like outside, like I'm in our library, and
Yeah, I can see
he's going back
forth
and forth.
wanting to get in on this conversation. Probably your dog can sense I'm here. That's what it is.
That's right. Like it's just so funny, and it's just like he's like, I'm love. I need to come in. And by the way, most of our pets are. I mean, they are like a clear channel of love, right?
Right. Of
Like
course. Of course. That's why we have they
exactly.
brighten up our lives. And like this morning, yesterday, not this morning, yesterday I went out for a run, and all of a sudden you hear the changes. The birds are starting to call and everything. And you to hear your heart, you have to be still. You have to be still, not only in your physicalness, but also your up here in your mentalness.
Yeah.
So when I go for a run, I'm really up here.
Mm.
where I first I take care of my thoughts for people suffering and everything. And then I try to think, how can I get my message out?
Mm.
You know, and it's honestly, it's my biggest struggle. If I was uber rich, no problem. I just get the message out. But when you're not, you're really looking out for help to get that message out. And the only thing I can do is just be positive that's going to happen. That's it.
That's it.
That's
That's
it.
it.
And a year from now, you know where we're at, we can come back and revisit this and see how we're doing as grains of sand.
Yeah, I love that.
Hmm.
And as our listeners, right? Like, be that grain of sand and
That grain
really
of sand,
like
really,
see how you're doing as that grain of sand. I
right?
mean, that's all we can do.
And just remember, none of us are perfect. None of us are, but we can try. We can actually make that effort to just be a better human being.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's it. Just be a better human being.
And,
So, Tom, where can people, if they're interested, buy this?
well, it's funny. It's really, you can go to your local bookstore and order if you
Excellent. I think that's a
you know
good
that
idea.
down. If you're in the Berkshire, you can go to a bookstore and say, "This Beyond the Stars, could you order that book for me?"
Yeah.
I mean,
And if you're not in the
I'm
Berkshires,
really, as you know, I'm trying to get a publisher to just take it all over because I personally,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm
Well, who
so
knows who's going to listen to the show? Tom
you
would
just
love
don't
a
know.
publisher.
Yeah, we know we have an agent. Let's have the agent, to better success on that. But
Right.
she's trying everything.
Yeah,
Things happen for a reason. We don't know the
exactly.
reason at the time. I put that out there, that book out there, and that led for me to say, there's a lot more you need to tell about this story.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really have to. You're going to make yourself vulnerable, and you're going to express pain that you didn't want to. We have a tendency, especially men, by the way. You know,
Yeah.
we have this, whether it's machoism. I mean, as you know, as a former soccer player, so I was like, oh,
Yeah.
as a big tough guy. Uh, but we have a tendency when we're hurt or just things that are just so painful that we're not going to talk about them. But the other person is, they have their hurt and they don't want to talk about it. But when one person can say, for instance, on the subject of UFOs, hey, look, I had this happen to me and it's real, and these are the pains I went through, and so on, and all this other stuff on paranormal stuff, someone's going to relate to it, and someone's going to relate to the pain you went through, and it's going to help them.
Yeah.
And we can't be afraid of our pain. I'm more afraid of not helping others. That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
someone once said to me, you know, after I had saved two boys from drowning, he said, you know, are you afraid to have it do this again? And I said, no, what I'm afraid of is I'll fail to save somebody.
Mm.
I'll fail to get that message out there. And so it's my drive. It's been my drive since I was a child, really,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
just help others.
Well, and isn't the timing fascinating
It
that
couldn't be better. God bless America. I mean, really, please, Lord, baby Jesus. I mean, really. I mean, I mean, there's and they departed the seas. Well, they departed the politicalness too. But just remember, we're all human beings. We all, at the end of the day, we all care about our kids, our families, our friends, and everything. You know,
we want peace
we
and we want our basic needs met. That's
right,
all.
but
And then
just
we
just get away
let,
from all the other garbage.
let's help
Just
each
care
other
about
get that,
people.
right?
You
I
know,
mean, it doesn't have to be like,
so divisive.
and also in the lack mentality, right? Like, can we switch to the abundance mentality where there's enough for everyone and we will all take care of each other?
We'll be all right. There was, I'm gonna leave you with this one.
Okay.
So there's the German priest, right? And he sat down with the troops and he says, "Dear God," in German, of course, but I don't
Right.
speak German. "Dear God, please bless these troops and bring them home." And then there's the Russian side, and they're, I don't speak Russian, but they're saying the same. God, please help these troops and bring them home. And the Americans are saying, "Oh, God bless America. Please bring all these troops home." God looks down and says, "What the hell's wrong with you people? What, what are you doing? Over what?" Most wars are fought over territory, religion, power.
Yeah.
But the power really isn't with this massive army or anything. It's with the grains of sand.
Yeah.
And your grain of sand is very, very, your individual grain of sand, your individual light, your individual love that you can give your fellow human beings is more important than that.
Mm. Yeah, I think that is the perfect place to end. And I love you to the stars and back.
To the stars, to the moon, and
to
back.
beyond the stars.
To beyond
Tom
the stars.
Warner.
Thank you,
And
Carol.
thank you so much for joining me. And
thank you for having me on as your guest. I appreciate it very much.
So very welcome.
Okay.
And thank you for our listeners to listening. And we'll be back another time soon.
In a year, we'll talk again.
Exactly. I love that idea.
All right.
All right.
Raise a loud voice for love. Sky above, stars will guide. Together rise, we can move. Feel the power. Side by side.